Test-driven development is a methodology that I use to create my programs. As you have seen in many of my tutorials, I start by creating the tests that I want my code to pass, and then I go on and start developing my feature. So why do I use this methodology? I'm going to tell you exactly why I use this methodology and why I think it's so good and why you should use it as well. So welcome to Programming with Matt. So I'm not going to explain everything that there is to know about TDD or how exactly to implement it, but in short, TDD is a methodology in which we create the tests and then we create our code. And why do we do that? The reasoning behind this is that we can build our code based on the tests that we need to pass. There is a simple cycle for TDD which is often referred to as red, green, refactor. This means red because we need to write a failing test. Then we have green, we need to make our test pass. And then refactor because we need to improve the quality of our code without breaking our existing test. Then the cycle repeats because we create a new failing test. So red, we make that test pass with our code, green, and then refactor. And that's the cycle of test-driven development. So why do I like it so much? There is a lot of reasons, but I've been thinking about them, and I have enumerated 6 reasons for why I like it so much and why I think you should use it as well. The first reason is that I think TDD is the best way to understand what you actually need to code. In many of our examples, we use very simple logic and very simple algorithms. But the truth is that when we're building software, we're building it for businesses that usually are very complex, like, I don't know, banks, transactions, and e-commerce. These are very, very complex businesses and processes around them. So when we build software like this, it's quite hard to understand everything that our system has to do. So in order to understand what the system has to do, one has to come up with requirements, functional requirements, non-functional requirements, and so on. And I've found that TDD is an amazing way to understand what our code needs to do. And this idea I got from a book called Bridging the Communication Gap by Gojko Adjik. I hope that I pronounced that properly, but if not, forgive me. And his idea in this book is that the best way to extract knowledge from subject matter experts, product owners, and stakeholders is basically by providing examples. And these examples can then become our automated tests. When we are talking with stakeholders or when we're talking with product managers or product owners, business analysts, what we usually do is we speak with examples. We ask questions like, what happens if we click on this button and the form is not completely full? Or what happens if the third column in this CSV is empty, and so on and so on. So these are the type of questions that we pose. And these questions are really examples of things that could happen if someone uses the system. So these examples are a way for us to bring something abstract like a business process into something more concrete, which is in a specific scenario. And if we can think of the different scenarios, then we can create code that will fulfill those scenarios. And that is what TDD is all about. We create scenarios which are our test cases, and then we create the code that fulfill those scenarios. So we create the code that for a given input will give us the expected output. Examples are the best way for us to communicate these abstract ideas. Even I am using examples while I'm talking with you in this video. So that's why I really like using TDD. I use these examples to understand what the system has to do, and I create test cases by applying examples. Usually when I meet with clients, with product owners, and so on, I would meet with them about a particular feature, and I would start writing test cases. I don't need to call them test cases in front of them, but that's what I am actually doing. I am writing test cases, and I'm saying, okay, what happens if this and this and this input? What is the output? And what happens if I have this and this and this input? What is the output? And what happens if I have this and this and this input? What is the output? And once I have that, I can go on and create my test cases in JUnit, for example, if I'm using Java. And then I can create my code that will pass those tests. And finally, I can go to the client and say, okay, I've passed all these tests, all scenarios that we talked about. They are all implemented now. And that can also become your criteria for finishing your tasks. Once you've passed all the tests, then your task is basically done. The second reason I like TDD, and which is rather obvious, is that it forces you to test your code. And in my years of experience, I've seen a lot of things. And I've seen a lot of systems that lack a lot of testing. But test-driven development puts such a focus on tests that it's impossible for you not to test your code. And this is amazing because you get the testing out of the box with the methodology. Honestly, I've never liked these code coverage tools very much. I've seen a lot of ugly tests written just for the sake of reaching some randomly assigned percentage of coverage. I don't really like those tools. I think they can encourage really bad practices. But with TDD, you can actually get the best kind of coverage, which is test cases coverage, because you go out of your way thinking on different tests that your code needs to pass. And I think this is a very, very good benefit of applying this methodology. The third reason I like TDD is because you get simpler design by using this methodology. The focus in the methodology is to get the test passing. And if you get the test passing, then you can focus on refactoring and making your code pretty. But at the beginning, the focus is on making your test green. And because your focus is there, you don't go out of the way thinking on design, and you just focus on making things work. And once you have things working, then you can refactor it, and you can be sure that your refactoring won't affect the output because you have your tests to validate your behavior. So you can refactor and make your code easier to read and more maintainable and less coupled and so on, but without forcing this and without making it so complex that then it's only you who will understand the design. And I have 3 more reasons why I like TDD, but before I do that, let me remind you to smash the like button, to leave comments, and to subscribe to the channel. I've noticed that a lot of you guys are watching the videos and not even subscribed, so don't miss on the opportunity to see more of the videos and get notifications on when the videos come out. And it really helps me when you subscribe, when you leave comments, when you like the videos. And I also thank you for all your support and all your very nice comments for the channel. Alright, so moving on to the fourth reason why I like this methodology. It goes really well with functional programming. And if you've been following this channel for a while now, you'll notice that I love functional programming. That's why I use Kafka streams. That's why I've been teaching how to do functional programming in Java. That's because I really, really think it's a great style for coding, and TDD goes really well with it. And there are some reasons why. And the first reason is really obvious. Functions in functional programming are really easy to test. That's because a function will, for a given input, it will always give you the same output. So creating scenarios for these kind of functions is really easy. Then data is immutable. And because the variables are immutable, we don't really need to worry about mutation of data while we're asserting or while we're verifying the certain behaviors. So that's also very, very convenient. And finally, side effects are isolated. So your code becomes really easy to test, and when you need to test some side effects, you can always use mock objects libraries or some other technique to test this particular part of your code. But because you've gone out of the way to isolate your side effects, then all your pure functions are really easy to test. The fifth reason is that I find that TDD is really good for pair programming. I've been leading a lot of teams over my years of experience, and I've always used pair programming. And the reason I use it is because I think it's one of the best activities that we get to do as developers. We learn from them, they learn from us, and it's a very enriching activity. I also think that pair programming is great when you have new team members and you need to share knowledge. Then you can always do pair programming, and you can guide them through the new code base for them. And also TDD benefits from pair programming, because while when you're creating your test cases, you have one more person who is contributing in thinking what are the test cases that we need to pass. So two are better than one in that case, right? Two people can think of more scenarios than only one. So I think this goes really well with pair programming. Finally, the sixth reason I think this is a great methodology is that you get documentation out of the box, because your test cases then become documentation that people can use to understand how the system works. And that is important, and that is a really cool feature of TDD. But because of that, you have to be very mindful when you create tests. You have to write them in a way that people can actually understand what they're looking at, and they're seeing, okay, this is what is happening in this test, and I understand that for this given input, I have this given output. And some test cases can be really complex, so you have to design your code in a way that is easy to test. If your code is not easy to test, then that is a sign of a bad design. So that is also a good feature that you get by doing TDD. If you're looking at a code that is really hard to test, then there's something wrong going on with this code. Alright, so that's why I love using TDD, that's why I always promote it in my teams, and you also have seen that I've used it a lot in all of my videos, in the Kafka stream videos, in the functional programming videos. I've always used it. So I really encourage you to start using this methodology and to leave comments in the chat saying, okay, Mati, I started using this methodology, it's quite good, it's hard, I don't know how to start. Whatever you think, guys, just comment, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And as always, it's been a pleasure to do this video with you. And if you liked it, just leave a comment, smash the like button, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.